Commander Hyan was asleep when the call came. It was 3 in the morning, station time. He had been dreaming about his grandmother's house in Daegu, about the smell of doenjang soup and the sound of rain on old roof tiles. Then his communicator beeped, and the dream faded away. He was the only human who had reached senior rank in the 7th Fleet. It had taken him 20 years of service. 3 wars and more close calls than he wanted to remember. He was 52 years old. His hair was turning gray, and he had learned to sleep whenever he could, because the galaxy never stopped having emergencies. "What is it?" he asked the darkness of his room. "Sir, there is a situation at Sensor Deck 7. A human recruit has produced anomalous readings. Officer Telvash is requesting your presence." Hyan rubbed his eyes. "Anomalous readings? What kind?" "All kinds, sir. The report says the equipment cannot classify her." That made Hyan sit up. Alliance sensor technology was the best in the galaxy. It could analyze beings down to their individual cells. It could read thoughts, measure potential, and predict capabilities with 99% accuracy. It did not fail to classify people. He got dressed and walked through the quiet corridors of the station. At this hour, most of the crew was sleeping. The lights were dimmed to simulate nighttime. His footsteps echoed on the metal-floored dot when he reached Medical Bay 12. Where Telvash had moved the recruit, he found the Kethrani officer pacing outside the door. All 4 of his hands were moving in nervous gestures. "She broke the sensor deck," Telvash said immediately. "People do not break sensor decks," Hyan replied. "This one did. Look at the data yourself." They went inside. The medical bay was a large white room filled with scanning equipment. 3 different machines surrounded a central examination table, each one more advanced than the last. Medical staff from 4 different species stood around the edges of the room, staring at holoscreens and whispering to each other. On the table sat Yuna. She was holding a cup of tea. She looked up when Hyan entered and gave him a small bow of respect, the way she might greet an elder in Korea. "Commander," she said politely, "I am sorry for causing trouble. I do not understand what is happening." Hyan pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. She looked completely normal. Young, healthy, a little tired from the long journey to the station. There was nothing about her that suggested she was anything unusual. But then he looked at the screens. The data made no sense. Her body was producing adrenaline at levels that should cause heart failure, but her heart was beating calmly. Her muscles contained fibers that were only found in species bred for combat, but she had never been enhanced or modified. Her immune system was fighting off diseases that did not exist on the station, as if it was preparing for threats before they arrived. "Recruit Yuna," Hyan said carefully. "The equipment says you have the adrenaline tolerance of a Vraxian berserker." She blinked. "I do not know what that is." "They are a warrior species. They can fight for 3 days without rest and feel no fear. The chemicals in their blood would kill most other beings." "Oh." She thought about this. "I do get nervous sometimes. Before exams, I used to feel sick to my stomach." Hyan continued reading the screen. "It also says you have the spatial awareness of a Mindari navigator. They are born with extra brain structures for understanding 3-dimensional space. You should not be able to match them." "I was good at archery," Yuna offered. "My coach said I had good eyes, and your pain threshold." Hyan paused. The number on the screen was so high that the system had simply written "beyond measurement" next to it. The chief medical officer, a being made of living jelly called an Orvan, rippled with frustration. Its species communicated through color changes, and right now it was flashing angry purple. "Commander, her cellular power production should be cooking her from the inside," the Orvan said. "Her mitochondria are generating energy at rates we have never seen. She should be dead." "She is drinking tea." Yuna looked down at her cup. They have very good tea here. Would you like some? Hyan did not know whether to laugh or call for backup. He had served alongside aliens for 2 decades. He had seen things that would drive lesser men mad. Crystal beings that sang in frequencies that could shatter steel. Creatures that existed in 11 dimensions at once. Intelligences that had no physical form at all, thought none of them had been this confusing. What did you do before you enlisted? He asked. I was a paramedic. I worked on an ambulance in Bizen for 2 years. Before that, I was a competitive archer. I almost made the national team, but I hurt my shoulder. And before that? She smiled a little, embarrassed. I was a student. Not a very good one. I kept falling asleep in class because I stayed up too late reading novels. The Orvan's color shifted to confused blue. This makes no sense. Her physical readings suggest she has been training since birth. Military conditioning. Combat preparation. Elite programs that take decades. I have never been in the military, Yuna said. Not really. I did basic service like everyone in Korea, but I worked in an office. Hyan leaned back in his chair. He was beginning to understand something, but he did not want to say it out loud yet. He had met other humans in the Alliance. Most of them tested within normal ranges. A little tougher than average, a little more adaptable, but nothing that stood out. But that was because the standard tests were not designed to push them. They measured what was expected and stopped there. No one had ever put a human through a full capability analysis before. No one had ever seen what happened when you measured everything a human could do. Run the scan again, he said to the medical staff. Use the protocols for high-gravity species, the ones designed for beings from death worlds. Sir, that seems excessive for a human. Do it. They did it. The results came back even more impossible than before. Yuna finished her tea and set the cup down. She looked at all the aliens staring at her with expressions of shock and disbelief. Did I do something wrong? She asked. Hyan shook his head slowly. No, Recruit Yuna. You did nothing wrong. I think we just never looked closely enough before. The recruitment station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. It was called Orbital Ring 7, and it had been processing new soldiers for the Galactic Alliance for over 300 years. Millions of aliens from thousands of different worlds had walked through its doors. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some had wings. Some had tentacles. Some were made of living rock. The station had seen everything. Officer Tailvash worked at the sensor deck. He was a Kathrani, which meant he had 4 arms, silver scales covering his body, and eyes that could see in complete darkness. He had been doing this job for 40 years. He was very good at it. Every being that stepped onto his sensor platform left with a complete file. The machines would scan their body, their mind, and their abilities. It took 6 minutes. Never more, never less. Tailvash was proud of his perfect record. He had never seen a scan he could not complete. Then the human woman walked in. Her name was Yuna. She was 23 years old and came from a place called Korea on the planet Earth. She was not very tall. She was not very strong-looking. She had black hair tied back in a simple style and wore the gray uniform of a new recruit. Her file said she wanted to be a navigator. It was a simple job, sitting at a console and plotting courses through space. TAEL single quotes. Vosh did not expect any problems. Please stand on the platform, he said, not really looking at her. He had done this 1,000 times. Yuna stepped onto the metal circle in the center of the room. Blue lights began to glow around her feet. The machines hummed as they started their work. Tailvash watched the holoscreen in front of him. Numbers and charts began to appear. Heart rate, brain activity, bone density, cellular structure. The usual things. Then the numbers stopped making sense. Her heart was beating at a normal speed, 62 beats per minute. That was fine. But the stress hormones in her blood said she should be dying. Her body was flooded with chemicals that would make most species collapse from fear. Yet she stood there calmly, looking around the room with mild curiosity. Telvash leaned forward. That was strange, but perhaps it was a machine error. Then he saw her neural readings. Her brain showed patterns of deep meditation, complete peace, inner calm. This was the brain of someone who had trained for decades to control their thoughts. But at the same time, her reflexes tested in the top fraction of all known species. Her reaction speed was faster than beings who were born to hunt and kill. The biological age scan flickered. It said she was 23. Then it said she was 200. Then it displayed an error message that Telvash had never seen before. Temporal inconsistency detected. What did that even mean? He ran the scan again. The second set of results was worse. Her cells were regenerating at a rate that matched species who lived for thousands of years. Her bones were denser than beings from planets with gravity 3 times stronger than Earth. The machines tried to measure her fear response, the part of the brain that felt terror and panic. It was there. It existed. But it seemed to be sleeping, dormant, like a weapon that had been put away but not destroyed. Telvash stood up from his chair. His 4 hands were shaking slightly. In 40 years, he had never seen readings like this. He had scanned warriors from death worlds. He had scanned beings that could survive in the vacuum of space. He had scanned creatures that ate radiation for food. None of them had confused his equipment like this small human woman. He looked at her. She was still standing on the platform, waiting patiently. She looked like any other young person. There was nothing special about her appearance. She could have been a student or a shop worker or someone's daughter coming home for dinner. But according to his machines, she should not exist. Is something wrong, officer? She asked. Her voice was polite and calm. Telvash did not know how to answer. He looked at the data again. The machines were now trying to calculate her maximum physical output. The numbers kept climbing. They passed the limits of normal humans. They passed the limits of enhanced soldiers. They kept going until the system simply gave up and displayed a question mark. He had scanned humans before. Earth had been part of the Alliance for 50 years. Humans were considered a young species, still learning about the galaxy. They were classified as developing species, limited spacefaring. They were not known for being special in any way. So why was this woman breaking his sensor deck? I need to call someone, Telvash said finally. Please wait here. Una nodded. Of course. Take your time. She said it the same way someone might say it in a waiting room on Earth. Like this was normal. Like she was not standing in a room full of machines that were failing to understand what she was. Telvash walked to the communication panel. His scales had turned a lighter shade of silver, which happened when his species was nervous. He opened a channel to the senior command deck. This is Officer Telvash at Sensor Deck 7. I need assistance. I have a situation. What kind of situation? The voice on the other end asked. Telvash looked back at Una. She had taken out a small device and was looking at it. Later, he would learn it was called a phone, and she was reading messages from her mother, asking if she had eaten properly. I have a human recruit, he said slowly, and my equipment cannot figure out what she is. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Did you say a human? Yes. And your equipment cannot read her? It can read her. The readings just do not match anything in our database. They do not match reality. According to these scans, she is impossible. Another pause. Then a sigh. Keep her there. I am sending Commander Hyan. He is human. Perhaps he can explain. The channel closed. Telvash turned back to look at Una. She had put her phone away and was now examining a small plant that sat on his desk. She touched one of its leaves gently and smiled. She looked so normal. So completely, utterly normal that Telvash realized was the most frightening thing of all. Admiral Krickstahl did not believe in mysteries. It was a Velthari, a species known for their cold logic and complete lack of imagination. His people had built their civilization on facts, evidence, and the absolute rejection of anything that could not be measured. He had served in the Alliance military for over a century, and in that time, he had learned one important truth. When something seemed impossible, someone was lying. So when the reports about the human recruit reached his desk, he did not feel wonder or curiosity. He felt suspicion, hidden enhancements, illegal modifications, some new technology that Earth was keeping secret. These were the explanations that made sense. The idea that an ordinary human could simply possess these abilities, naturally, was not worth considering. He ordered Yuna transferred to testing station. Omega. The station existed in a distant corner of Alliance space, far from any populated world. It was not a place that appeared on public maps. Its purpose was simple: to break things and see how they worked. The Alliance sent its most dangerous weapons there for testing, its most advanced soldiers, its most mysterious discoveries. The obstacle courses on Testing Station Omega had killed warriors from species bred for battle. The psychological chambers had destroyed the minds of telepaths and empaths. The endurance trials were designed by scientists who had spent their careers studying pain and fear. Yuna arrived on a small transport ship. She was given standard equipment, a basic suit, a helmet, and a pair of boots that had seen better days. Nothing special, nothing enhanced. You will proceed through the testing sequence, the station commander told her through a speaker. Do your best. We will be watching. Yuna looked around the gray metal room. It was cold and empty except for a single door at the far end. What kind of tests? She asked. You will see. Begin. The door opened, and she walked through. The first test was the zero-gravity combat maze. It was a massive structure of floating platforms, spinning walls, and sudden drops. The gravity shifted randomly. Up became down without warning. Soldiers were expected to navigate through it while avoiding automated weapons that fired stun rounds. The previous record for completing the maze was held by a Taraxian warrior who had been modified with cybernetic implants and had trained for the test for 3 years. He had finished in 43 minutes. Yuna finished in 11. The scientists watching the monitors did not understand what they were seeing. She moved through the changing gravity like she had been born in space. When the platform shifted, she was already jumping to where they would be, not where they were. The weapons could not track her because she was never where they expected her to be. How is she predicting the changes? One scientist asked. The pattern is supposed to be random. She is not predicting, another replied, his voice quiet with something like fear. She is adapting. In real time. Faster than the system can adjust. The second test was the sensory deprivation corridor. It was designed to break minds. When a being entered, the corridor would scan their brain and find their deepest fears. Then it would create perfect illusions of those fears. Darkness that crushed the soul. Sounds that drove beings mad. Visions of death and failure and everything a person tried not to think about. Species with strong mental conditioning usually lasted about 10 minutes before they had to be pulled out. Most could not function for hours afterward. Yuna walked through the corridor, humming a song. It was an old Korean lullaby, something her mother had sung to her when she was small. The corridor threw everything it had at her. Darkness, isolation, voices telling her she was worthless, visions of everyone she loved dying in front of her. She kept humming. When she emerged on the other side, the monitoring team checked her mental state. She was calm. Her brain showed patterns of something the scientists called a flow state, a condition of complete focus that usually only appeared in beings with decades of meditation training. Were the illusions not working? The station commander asked through the speaker. Yuna thought about the question. They were working. I saw many bad things, but they were not real, so I decided not to pay attention to them. She said it simply, like it was obvious. Like anyone would do the same thing. The third test was the pain threshold examination. This was the test that made even the scientists uncomfortable. A being would be connected to a machine that stimulated their pain receptors directly. The intensity would increase until they could not continue. Yuna was connected to the machine. The technician, a nervous young alien with too many eyes, explained what would happen. We will start at level 1 and increase gradually. Tell us when you need to stop. Okay, Yuna said. The machine started. Level 1. Level 5. Level 5. Level 10. The readings showed her pain receptors were firing. Her brain was receiving the signals. Her body knew it was being hurt, but she just sat there, her expression thoughtful. Is it not working? She asked. I feel something, but it is not very strong. The technician checked the machine. It was working perfectly. He looked at the intensity level and felt his stomachs twist. They were at level 30. Level 30 was designed for species that felt almost no pain at all. Species with shells of living metal. Species that regenerated from any wound. Turn it up more, Yuna said. I want to help with your test. They turned it up to level 50, then level 70. At level 85, the machine reached its maximum setting. Yuna frowned slightly. I think I feel it now, she said. It is uncomfortable, like a bad headache. Admiral Crystal watched the recording 17 times. He watched this small human woman walk through tests that had killed warriors. He watched her shrug off psychological torture. He watched her describe maximum level pain as a bad headache. What is she? He finally asked. Commander Hyan, who had been brought in to observe, stood next to him in the control room. He looked at the screens showing Yuna, who was now asking the testing staff if there was somewhere she could get lunch. She is human, Hyan said. That is the problem. They are all like this. We just usually do not test them this thoroughly. Impossible. Humans are a young species. You have been in space for less than a century. That is true. But we have been on Earth for 200,000 years. And Earth has been trying to kill us for all of that time. Ice ages, plagues, predators, starvation. We adapted. We kept adapting. We adapted so well that we forgot we were doing it. On the screen, Yuna had found a food dispenser and was trying to figure out how to get it to make rice. She does not even know what she is, Crystal said. No, Hyan agreed. None of us do. We just call it being human. 6 days after her testing was complete, Yuna returned to Orbital Ring 7. The scientists had finished their examinations. The admirals had finished their arguments. She had been cleared to continue her training as a navigator, though her file now carried several classified warnings that she was not allowed to see. She was happy to be back. The testing station had been cold and unfriendly. Here, at least, there were other recruits to talk to and proper food to eat. She had made a few friends among the alien trainees, a nervous Orvan named Plix, who was training to be an engineer, and a large furry being called Moth, who wanted to be a pilot. It was evening when the attack came. Yuna was in the recreation deck, playing a card game with Plix and losing badly because she did not understand the rules. Moth was watching and laughing at her mistakes in a friendly way. Then the lights went red and the alarm started screaming. Hull breach, a mechanical voice announced. All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Yuna had never heard that alarm before. Around her, beings were running in all directions. Some were heading toward the escape pods. Others were grabbing weapons from emergency lockers. The station shook as something hit it from outside. "What is happening?" she asked. Plix was already changing color, shifting to a pale yellow that meant terror. "Vreth. It must be the Vreth. They are raiders. They take stations apart for resources. They take people too. Take people for what?" Plix did not answer. The color spoke for itself. The security forces were engaging the enemy in the main corridors. Yuna could hear weapons fire in the distance, mixed with sounds she did not recognize. Screaming, crunching, something that might have been laughter, but was too sharp and cruel to be joyful. The evacuation protocols activated. Holographic arrows appeared on the walls, pointing toward the inner shelters where civilians would be protected. The other recruits followed them without question. Yuna started to follow. Then she heard something else. Children crying. It was coming from the other direction, toward the outer sections of the station where the whole breach had occurred. The educational center was there. She remembered seeing it on her first day, a bright room full of young aliens learning about the galaxy. Orvan children, mostly, because their species matured slowly and needed years of schooling. The arrows pointed away from that direction. The protocols were clear. Get to safety. Let the security forces handle the threat. Do not interfere. Yuna turned and ran toward the crying. The corridors near the hull breach were filled with smoke and debris. The artificial gravity was failing in patches, making her stumble and float at random intervals. Emergency lights flickered red. The normal sounds of the station, the hum of engines, the whisper of recycled air, were gone. Replaced by chaos. She found the educational center by following the screams. The door had been torn off its hinges. Inside, she could see them. 7 breath hunters surrounding a group of Orvan children who had huddled together in the corner. The hunters were tall, nearly 3 meters, with 6 limbs and bodies covered in natural armor. Their faces were flat and expressionless, but their mouths were filled with teeth designed for tearing. The children were crying. One of them, smaller than the others, was trying to push the bigger ones behind her, protecting them. She could not have been more than 5 years old in Earth terms. Yuna did not think about what she was doing. She did not calculate her chances or consider her options. She saw the children. She saw the monsters. And something inside her that had been sleeping all her life finally woke up. She picked up a broken support strut from the damaged wall. It was heavy metal, about the length of her arm, jagged at one end where it had snapped. "Hey," she said. The Vreth turned. All 7 of them. Their heads moved in unison, like predators catching a new scent. They saw a small human female in a recruit uniform, holding a piece of scrap metal, standing alone in a broken doorway. If they had any concept of threat assessment, they did not apply it to her. The first one lunged. What happened next would be analyzed by Alliance military experts for years afterward. The security recordings were studied frame by frame. Specialists in combat, biology, and psychology wrote papers about it. None of them could fully explain it. Yuna moved, not like a trained soldier, not like an enhanced warrior. She moved like water finding the fastest path downhill, like lightning choosing where to strike. Every motion was exactly what it needed to be, nothing more, nothing less. The first Vreth reached for her with 2 of its arms. She was not there. She was below it, inside its guard, and the strut punched through a gap in its armor that should not have been visible to human eyes. The creature fell. The second and third came together. She used the body of the first as a shield, then as a weapon, throwing it into them and following with strikes that found nerve clusters and joint weaknesses with surgical precision. The fourth tried to flank her. She caught its arm, redirected its momentum, and used it to knock the fifth off its feet. Her strut came down twice. They stopped moving. The sixth and seventh finally understood that something was wrong. They tried to retreat, to create distance, to use their size and numbers. But there was no distance in that small room. There was only Yuna, and she was everywhere they were not. 31 seconds after the first Vreth lunged, she was the only one standing. The security team arrived 4 minutes later. They found Yuna kneeling among the children, checking them for injuries, speaking softly in Korean. The words did not translate perfectly, but the tone did ancient comfort sounds that meant safety and calm. The Vreth were arranged in a neat pile near the wall. 3 of them were still breathing, which surprised the security officers. They had expected executions, not restraint. How? The security captain asked. He was a Velthari, like Admiral Crystal, and his species did not believe in things they could not explain. Yuna looked at the strut in her hand. It was bent now, twisted by the force she had applied. She had not noticed. "I was scared," she said. "When I am scared, I get focused." The captain's species had a fear response too. It made them freeze. It made them analyze threats until the threats killed them. It did not make them do what this woman had done. What does fear do to humans? He asked. Yun had considered the question for a long moment. She looked at the children, who were finally calming down. She looked at the broken bodies of the monsters who had tried to hurt them. "It makes us decide what matters," she said. Then she went back to comforting the children. And the security captain stood there in the ruined room, trying to understand what kind of species could turn fear into a weapon. The Galactic Alliance Council met in a great, circular chamber at the heart of Central Station Prime. It was the largest gathering of species in known space. Representatives from over 4,000 worlds sat in rising tiers, their bodies ranging from insect-like to crystalline to forms that human eyes could not fully process. Today, they had only one topic to discuss: humanity. For 50 years, humans had been classified as developing species, limited spacefaring. It was a polite way of saying they were young, primitive, and not particularly important. They had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Their planet was small and unremarkable. They had no special abilities, no ancient technologies, no empire to speak of. That classification no longer seemed accurate. Admiral Crystal stood before the council and presented his findings. He showed them the sensor data that refused to make sense. He showed them the test results that exceeded all predictions. He showed them the security recording from Orbital Ring 7, where a single untrained human had defeated 7 Vreth hunters in half a minute. "We have a problem," he said. "We do not know what humans are." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had been at war for centuries found themselves agreeing for once. This was concerning. Species that prided themselves on their combat abilities felt something they had not felt in generations: uncertainty. "Surely there is an explanation," a Mindari representative said. "Hidden genetic modifications. Secret training programs. Something that explains these results." "We checked," Crystal replied. "She has no modifications. She has no special training. Her DNA is normal human DNA, a chaotic mess of random mutations and evolutionary accidents. There is nothing that should give her these abilities." Then the tests were wrong. We reran them 7 times with different equipment. The results were consistent. A silence fell over the chamber. Finally, one of the elder representatives spoke. She was from a species so old that no one remembered their original name. They had seen empires rise and fall across millions of years. "Tell us about their world," she said. "Tell us about Earth." Crystal pulled up a holographic display of the blue planet. "Earth is a mid-sized world in an unremarkable solar system. Standard gravity, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Approximately 70% water coverage. What about their evolutionary history? This was the part Krickstahl had not wanted to discuss. He changed the display, showing a timeline that stretched back billions of years. Their planet has experienced 5 major extinction events: asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, ice ages that lasted millions of years. At various points, nearly all life on the planet was destroyed. The surviving species adapted and continued. Humans evolved through this? Their direct ancestors survived the last 2 extinction events. Before that, their genetic predecessors survived the previous 3. Every generation was selected for survival against impossible odds. The elder representative leaned forward. So they are not special because of any single trait. They are special because their entire existence has been a test. And only the ones who could pass every test survived to reproduce. That is one way to interpret it, yes. They adapt to everything, a military analyst added, projecting new data. We have humans serving in high-gravity environments where other species need powered suits. We have humans working in radiation zones that would kill most beings within hours. Their bodies treat damage that would be fatal to others as temporary inconveniences. And their minds? Worse, they refuse to recognize impossible odds. When told a situation is hopeless, they do not despair. They look for solutions. When told something cannot be done, they try anyway. Their psychological resilience exceeds every predictive model we have. The council fell silent again. Finally, someone asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we classify them? No existing category fit. They were not a warrior species. They had art and music and an inexplicable love for small furry animals. They were not a hive mind. They argued constantly and seemed to enjoy disagreement. They were not engineered or enhanced. Their biology was natural, if impossible. Commander Hyan stood. He was the only human in the chamber, and every eye and sensor turned toward him. Permission to speak as humanity's representative? Granted. He walked to the center of the floor, a small figure surrounded by the collected might of galactic civilization. We are not special, he said. We are just stubborn. Our planet tried to freeze us, so we learned to make fire. It tried to starve us, so we learned to farm. It tried to isolate us, so we built boats and crossed oceans. We are what happens when you try to kill something for 4 billion years and it refuses to die. Your recruit killed 7 Vreth in 31 seconds. She protected children. Any human would have tried. She just happened to succeed. Happened to succeed? The odds of an untrained human defeating 7 Vreth hunters are, we do not care about odds, Hyan said. We never have. We know we might fail. We try anyway. That is not a superpower. It is just how we think. The council debated for 6 more hours. They brought in experts on evolution, psychology, and military strategy. They reviewed every piece of data they had on human performance. They argued and calculated and predicted doubt in the end. They created a new classification, species of anomalous persistence. The official definition was long and technical. It talked about adaptive capacity and psychological resilience and evolutionary selection pressure. But the unofficial definition, the one that spread through Alliance personnel within base, was much simpler. Do not try to measure humans. Just point them at problems. Yuna received her navigation certification 2 weeks later. She served with distinction for 40 years, eventually becoming a senior instructor who trained 3 generations of Alliance officers. She was never once late for her shift. She never complained about difficult assignments. She treated every day as something to be grateful for. When she retired, the Alliance gave her a medal and a speech about her remarkable service. She thanked them politely and said she was just doing her job. She went home too. Korea and spend her remaining years in a small house near the sea. Sometimes, former students would visit her beings from dozens of different species who had learned navigation from the woman, who had once confused every sensor in the Alliance. She would make them tea and tell them stories about the old days. She never mentioned the Vreth incident unless someone asked, and even then, she would shrug and say she had just done what needed to be done. The sensor deck at Orbital Ring 7 was eventually replaced. The new system was more advanced, more accurate, and better at handling unusual readings. But the technicians who installed it added a special setting, created after extensive testing of human recruits. The setting appeared as a small notice in the corner of the display. Human detected. Baseline readings may not reflect actual capabilities. Proceed with adjusted expectations. No one ever figured out what the adjustment should be. Some things, the scientists finally admitted, could not be measured. Some things just had to be witnessed. Some things had to be believed. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new batch of human recruits was stepping onto sensor platforms, their readings making no sense, their potential impossible to calculate. They were just ordinary people from an ordinary planet. That was the most extraordinary thing about them.